I got a new book out, you know the drill. Let's talk about twisting a genre. Generally, genre talk centers around either the core concepts of a genre and what's needed to align with that genre, or how to subvert the genre, or how to outright deconstruct it. For example, let's take the Western. A Western generally needs a gunslinger, cowboy, sheriff, or some other protagonist with a gun. It generally features landscapes reminiscent of the American Southwest, and revolves around themes including individuality, law, and the frontier. The longer a genre goes on, the more stale it becomes, the greater the desire to change it. This leads to the genre getting subverted. You get something like the spaghetti western, which still features all the hallmarks of a western, including the lawmen, the guns, and the landscape, but which starts to break away from those clearly defined tropes. No more white hats and black hats, no more obvious good guys and bad guys. Ultimately, this leads to the deconstruction, where those tropes are actively broken down, reversed, or exposed, like in movies such as Unforgiven. Man, we're getting a lot of Clint Eastwood on this channel recently. If the genre is strong enough to survive this deconstruction, you get a rebirth, often in the form of revisionist media. For the Western, that would be something like No Country for Old Men, but I'll let you argue about the specifics in the comments. All genres go through this cycle. For comic fans, you can look at how the medium evolved from the Silver Age to the dark and gritty subversion of the late 80s and early 90s to the deconstructionist wave in the 2000s. Things like The Boys, The Authority, and Irredeemable. And you can even go so far as to argue the MCU represents a revisionist phase. That's probably a stretch. Again, you can argue about it in the comments. The heist genre has itself gone through these many twists and turns, these cycles of birth, death, and rebirth. But typically a heist story these days comes in one of two flavors: the heist proper and the double cross. In the heist proper, something like Ocean's 11 or Now You See Me, remember that weird little movie? In the heist proper, the heist is the point. Will the characters succeed in stealing the thing, and how are they going to do it? They follow pretty set formulas, including montages of planning the heist, and a slick, sometimes voiced over segment of the actual heist itself. In the double cross, getting the goods usually goes smoothly, but the characters are betrayed at the last minute by a business partner. These are popular in shorter form mediums like television, where you need to move pieces a little faster. Instead of spending an entire act setting up the heist, an act for the heist itself, and an act for the heist going wrong and the characters escaping, they typically leave the double cross for the third act. The thing that goes wrong isn't the heist, it's what comes after. This helps explain why they show up so often in places like Firefly or Cowboy Bebop. Recently, however, I watched 3 movies that did something really interesting with the heist genre. If you want to get super into semantics, you might call these films subversions, but they never really felt like subversions when I was watching them. It was something like a half step, less of a full change in the genre, and more of a twist, if you will. What made these twists really interesting to me was how instead of simply subverting the genre, instead of changing a few things to add a breath of fresh air, they played it largely straight. They weren't trying to undercut the genre, they were trying to find new room to explore within it. They were trying to use a new lens, a new perspective, rather than tear them apart or tear them down. So let's take a look at them and see if we can learn something along the way. Heist is a 2001 film starring Gene Hackman, Sam Rockwell, and Rebecca Pidgeon, and written and directed by David Mamet. It's a heist movie, as you may have guessed from the title. There are several heists in the movie, things get stolen, and so on. Only the movie isn't actually about any of the heists. All of the heists go well with minimal complications. All the people committing the heist are seasoned professionals capable of thinking on their feet. The tension in this movie comes not from thieving, but from the thieves. See, the movie is about a veteran thief who gets pulled into one last job by his two-timing fence. Both the thief and the fence are too smart to trust one another. And so the movie is actually a game of cat and mouse between two intelligent criminals, one of whom is played by Gene Hackman and the other by Danny DeVito. It's a pretty good setup for a movie. Though it uses a lot of the same parts, the same sequences, and a checklist of familiar tropes from the heist genre, and the movie is literally called Heist, the heist couldn't be farther from the point. By shifting the lens from the thieving to the thieves, the movie brings a surprisingly new perspective on a familiar genre. It's not subversive and it's not deconstructing. It's just an interesting, cool twist on something we've become so familiar with. The next movie we're going to talk about is amazing, and I, for the life of me, can't remember where I found out about it. It might have been on one of Colville's Mimnos streams, or maybe the Trailers from Hell YouTube channel. In any case, this movie rules, and you should go watch it. The Silent Partner is a 1978 Canadian movie starring Elliot Gould, written by Curtis Hanson, directed by Daryl Duke, and based on the novel by Anders Bodilson. It's a movie not about a bank robber, but about the bank teller during a robbery. Oh, and he's also stealing money from the bank. See, the main character figures out that the bank is going to be robbed ahead of time, and so he figures he can steal a little extra off the top with the bank robber getting blamed. Perfectly logical plan. Except the bank robber gets away. So now the bank robber is sitting at home watching the evening news and finds out a whopping $50,000 was stolen, while his bag has only 10. So where's the other 40? The rest of the movie is about the bank teller trying to get away with the perfect crime and not be murdered by the bank robber in the process. Again, we see a twist on the genre, still employing all the same tricks to bring a new perspective on the familiar. Also, it has a Baby John Candy in it, so go check it out. And lastly, we need to talk about Reservoir Dogs. I'm not the biggest Tarantino fan, and honestly, I nearly turned this movie off during the opening Madonna discussion that goes on for way too long, but I'm glad I didn't because this movie's pretty damn good. Reservoir Dogs, 1992, written and directed by Tarantino, is a movie featuring a cast seemingly formed entirely out of underrated actors, and is a heist movie that doesn't actually feature a heist. We never see the heist during this entire movie, we only hear about it from the other characters. The movie has nothing to do with the diamonds being stolen, and everything to do with the personalities, backstories, and motivations of the thieves committing the heist. There's a rat on this ship, and they need to find out who it is before the cops show up. It also features what has to be the best I know in cinema since Empire. We never see the heist because it doesn't matter to the story they're telling. The question isn't will they or won't they get away, we open the movie with them getting away. The only question that matters is, who's the rat? The heist genre is again played straight here. The only difference is that we shift the perspective twice. First onto these dirtbag criminals as opposed to the sympathetic ones we normally get, and then to after the heist, rather than during. We get an entirely new story out of the genre while still existing within the tropes and themes that conform to it, simply by asking what happens after the part we're all used to seeing. One of the things you'll notice about all three of these movies is their focus on character rather than plot. The specifics of the heist, the things being stolen, the money, none of them really matters to the movies themselves. Instead, it's all about the characters being caught up in these things, and the consequences and ripples that result as a consequence of said heist. I think when we think about genre, especially the current ruling genre of the day, be it westerns or superheroes, which are kind of just westerns when you think about it, don't think about that too hard. When we think about what's popular, we want to break it down, subvert it, change it into something darker, grittier, or stranger, in order to make it interesting. And you can get a lot of interesting stories out of that. But let's face it, it's the easy option. It's a lot easier to flip a big switch to something into its opposite in order to generate a new story than it is to thoroughly explore the existing space. There's a reason we get so many what if Superman but bad comics, and a lot fewer that are willing to bring a new perspective to the genre, to view it through a new lens, or just give it a little twist. I'm Michael Aguero. Thanks for watching. I got a new book out. You can support the channel by picking up a copy, or just tell a friend about us. We're kind of treading water here, so every bit helps. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.